Well, good afternoon, good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Kristen Ang, the Policy Director and Lobbyist for Faith Action Network. We'd like to say we advocate for just and compassionate legislation or in the halls of power. And thank you for being part of our network. So I'm going to talk about what's happening in the legislative session because it is jam-packed. The 2026 Washington State Legislative Session is 60-day short session that started on January 12th, and it's a supplemental budget year. My nickname for the short session is the espresso session because it is short and intense. But despite these short timelines, decisions being made right now will have long-lasting consequences for for communities across our state. The Democrats hold majorities in both chambers. In fact, has increased it 30-19 in the Senate and 59-39 in the House. But the political dynamics have shifted in important ways, which I might have told you last year. In 2025, the Senate welcomed 8 new Democratic members, bringing new leadership and perspectives. In the House, 21 new members joined following retirements, departures, and decisive Democratic victory in the 18th Legislative District with Senator Cortez. The result is a House that is much younger and more progressive, but the other side is also, we are seeing a divide more than in past years, with a caucus more willing to challenge austerity and name structural inequities in our tax system. And this is the context in which lawmakers are confronting one of the central challenges of this session, and that's the budget. The budget is the shadow that hangs over every session, but more so this past session and this session in itself. So we do have a choice. Washington is facing a projecting $2.3 billion shortfall, driven by a revenue downturn, inflation, more demands, and impacts of federal policy, including H.R. 1, often referred to as the big, beautiful bill, but I call it something else, big, brutal bill, which shifted costs to states while reducing federal support. No state in the nation is actually prepared or have the funds to fill in these gaps. Washington is actually one of the more well-off states. Last session, the legislature already resolved a $16 billion shortfall, largely through a combination of reserves, one-time solution, and delayed investments, unfortunately, whether that's even for foster care or age blind and disabled. This means many of these easy options are gone. We are going down to the bone, as they say in cutting. Governor Bob Ferguson has proposed a cuts-only approach to close the remaining gap this year, with nearly $800 million in agency cuts, in which some of our healthcare, education partners, and others are pushing back on, and a $569 million shift of Climate Commitment Act funds, and approximately $1 billion from the Rainy Day Fund. Notably, the governor has said he is not proposing new tax revenue this year, but he is supporting the millionaire's tax, which has not dropped. This approach has reignited a fundamental debate with regards to austerity versus values. Will Washington respond to this moment with austerity or with a values-driven budget that protects dignity, stability, and the common good? We have somewhat been here before with the economic crisis of the downturn in 2008, in which we have not seen social infrastructure actually rise to the levels of those before those times. Because of 2011, 2012, we gutted our social infrastructure, our safety nets. Advocates, including Faith Action Network and coalition partners, have been clear. Balancing the budget on the backs of people who are already struggling is not a moral solution. A moral budget prioritizes basic needs, protects the most vulnerable, and asks those with the greatest capacity to contribute more fairly. And so this is why, at the heart of this conversation and some of the solutions we're proposing is progressive revenue, including 2 major proposals: the millionaire's tax, which will drop sometime this session, and House Bill 2100, the Washington Well Fund. Washington has one of the most regressive tax systems in the country, meaning those at the middle to bottom pay more into the tax system. A higher share of their income taxes than the wealthiest residents. We were once the worst in terms of the most regressive, but we are now second to last. Florida is now the last. That's because we passed the capital gains tax for those who make profits of over $250,000. That's not the sale of $250,000, it's profits of $250,000 on stocks and bonds, and also having a working families tax credit that gives back money to low to medium households, about $1,250 the max per year. So if you do qualify, please apply for those things. The millionaire's tax, some of the details about that, it would apply a 9.9% tax on annual income over $1 million. It would affect only about 20,000 of the wealthiest individuals statewide, which is about 0.5% of Washington's population. And early estimate shows it could raise about $3.5 billion per year. This is not about punishing success, it's about aligning our tax codes with today's economy. As you've probably all noticed or heard on CNBC, or if you watch Wall Street, talk about the K-shaped economy. Those that are doing well are doing even better, investing more, and those that are just like medium, middle income and low income families are actually struggling even more to deal with the affordability that's happening. And so this ensures that extreme wealth contributes, this millionaire's tax ensures that extreme wealth contributes to the systems that make prosperity possible: schools, infrastructure, healthcare, housing, and public safety. This is a long-term structural fix, not a one-time pitch, and it will help stabilize some funding. The next one is House Bill 2100, which is being proposed by Rep. Sean Scott. It's called the Washington Well Fund, as a nickname for it. We testified in support for this funding stream, and House Bill 2100 would establish a 5% payroll tax on employers. Employers would be the one to pay, who have more than $7 million in annual payroll, and apply primarily to wages above $125,000, and this would generate over $2 billion per year in ongoing revenues. This bill is designed as a long-term response to some of the fiscal instability that we are seeing, but also in response to HR 1. Because HR 1 gave tax breaks to the top, the most tax breaks to the top, 10%, if not 1%, while gutting healthcare, food assistance, et cetera. And so we do need to have a Washington State response. Chris Reichdale, the superintendent, said we are spending now less per student adjusted for inflation than we did 7 years ago. And meanwhile, families are facing skyrocketing costs for housing, childcare, and healthcare. And so we believe that House Bill 21 begins to correct this imbalance. Of course, housing is, always a priority, and it's this year. I think the theme is from punishment to permanence. Housing is both a budget issue and a moral issue, and here are some of the bills. One you maybe have heard about is the Shelters Not Penalties. That's House Bill 2489 with Gregerson. And if you want our fan agenda, which has all the bills of every different sections, they're in the back there on the table if you don't have one already. So that's House Bill 2489. And this would prohibit local governments from criminalizing life-sustaining activities in public when adequate shelter is not available. So instead of spending public dollars on citations, fines, and incarceration, it redirects resources towards service providers and real solutions. The bill responds directly to some of the harmful trends following recent court rulings and some of what the local governments have been doing, and affirms that survival is not a crime. The other one is House Bill 1859, which originated from Spokane. I'm just going to shout out Spokane and your organizer, Bree, and some of your coalition members here. It's House Bill 1859, expanding affordable housing on faith property. So this would expand opportunities for affordable housing by increasing density bonuses, having some sales tax exemptions for properties on religious organizations, and that for multi-faith. So that originated from Spokane, and that 50% or more of these units must serve low-income households. So this bill recognizes that faith communities are critical partners in addressing the housing crisis and removes barriers that prevent underused land from becoming homes. The other bill that has momentum is House Bill 2266. This has an executive session scheduled this coming week. You have to pass all your bills out of policy committee by February 4th. So the two bills I've mentioned, shelters not penalties, and this one, House Bill 2266, legalize to have more permanent supportive housing, have executive sessions this week, and they could use your advocacy So this bill would prevent local governments from denying or delaying permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, or emergency shelters through zoning and permitting obstacles. So that's called step housing, shelters, transitional, emergency for permanent supportive housing. So this makes sure that if residents can be built here, then shelters and other types of housing can be built as well. Because sometimes local governments will be very NIMBY and basically block, delay, or outright make it unlawful to build this type of housing. And the other one is to maintain a strong housing budget, for the Housing Trust Fund, and additional $3 million for eviction defense program. And just to touch up on the environment, AI, climate justice and the AI economy and data centers have become, I guess, what's in the media. And one of the most emergent issues is the expansion of these AI-driven data centers. And some of the bills that we're looking at is House Bill 2245 and House Bill 2515, which addresses the energy, water, and climate impacts of these facilities. And this requires data centers to comply with the Washington's 100% clean electricity law, that they too have to be sustainable, and establish standards for affordability, transparency, and environmental accountability, and then preventing them from disproportionately harm to overburdened and frontline communities, and making sure that, it's not our wallets that are subsidizing their profits, that technology and these data centers actually have to serve the people and not at the expense of climate or our community. And the other one I'm just going to mention is Senate Bill 5974. This is more public safety. It's accountability and standards for law enforcement leaders, as well as not with the use of volunteers, that you can't just simply deputize these volunteers for ICE enforcement, et cetera. And then some of the things that we also have on our legislative agenda, Jean will go over, because we share similar with regards to immigration enforcement, no mask for law enforcement, safe spaces, disinvestment for private detention centers, et cetera. But if you have any questions, I'm going to be here all day. Plus, we have a website, fanwa.org, in which the legislative agenda, as well as the bill tracker that we update every week, you can see what's happening with your bills, as well as one-pagers on these bills and e-news. And I'll pass it on to Jean.
Jean Welch-Hill, Washington State Catholic Conference. And yes, the other thing that's happening in this very intense session is responses to what's happening on the immigration side federally, and trying to address how do we protect our people from this out-of-control immigration enforcement regime that we're seeing happening. And so there's a lot of bills. I will tell you, if you come to our session, diving a little deeper, I will give you the list of immigration-related bills. This isn't even all of the bills. This is the ones that may actually move on. But there is a lot of effort to try and address the fear that is in the community, and just the sense that what's happening in Minneapolis could happen anywhere, and we want to be prepared for that and ahead of the game. But first and foremost, with the budget, one of the other cuts in the budget is a cut to Apple Health expansion. Apple Health expansion covers undocumented immigrants. As we know, when it was funded up to 12,000 people. Only 8,000 were enrolled, not because 12,000 didn't come forward, but because that's where Department of Health stopped enrollment. So there was extra money for 3,000 more that didn't get spent. And now we're going to cut Apple Health expansion by 40%. So we're taking people who are being stalked by the federal government and depriving them of basic necessities such as health care. So this is something we've been advocating for with the governor. One point that the governor's office made to us that is a really valid point on this, one of the reasons that they have stopped this enrollment is because of the fact that they're being asked regularly to give information on who's enrolled in Apple Health to the federal government, which is not something we want to do at this point in time because we know that information will be misused. So there's some pieces of this to work out, but we cannot deny people access to basic needs such as health care. So we will be continuing our efforts on that. Another really important bill that we're supporting is it's HB 2105 and SB 5852. This is about I-9 audits. If you're working for an employer and you're a foreign national or whatever, however you want to term it, you fill out an I-9 form. The federal government will occasionally want to check those I-9 forms to make sure they're accurate, but usually that precedes now, in our current situation, a raid on the business. So the bill is very simple. If the employer gets notice that they're going to have their I-9 forms audited, they will inform their employees that that is going to happen. And the bill has been substituted, and the changes make it so the AG's office will create the form of the notice. They'll put it in multiple languages so it's available. All the business has to do is put the date of the intended audit and share that with their employees how they would normally share out information with their employees. It's a very simple request for an employer to make sure. It may be that an employee has used a false Social Security number, or it may be that they put a number wrong unintentionally on their form. This gives them 3 days before the audit happens to try and correct those discrepancies, or to make the plans they're going to need to make when the raid happens and they get taken away from their families. So it's an important bill, again, to give people a chance to respond rather than just having a business raided and people rounded up like cattle. Another big piece that we are looking at, de-investing in private prisons. Glad you're all supportive. SB 6109, there is no reason that any state should invest in a business that commodifies human beings and makes their money off of human misery. So we want the state out. This is, the state is doing all of this great work to show they don't support what's happening on the immigration front, and then you're helping to fund a piece of what's happening on the immigration front. So 6109 did have a committee hearing, and I believe it's gone to Ways and Means Committee, so it still has a chance. It's made it out of its policy committee, essentially, and is now in the Ways and Means Committee because it does have a fiscal note. We testified, yes.
Thursday. We testified on Thursday.
The religious factor was represented. We did that. There's so many bills, so I want to make sure I get kind of the hit the tops. The SAFE Act is an important bill as well. SAFE Act makes sure that information at schools, at daycares, at learning centers is not shared with the federal government. Originally, it also included healthcare facilities. Those were taken out to make the bill passable because that kind of raised some issues. And it also originally required a judicial warrant to go into those facilities. Unfortunately, the judicial warrant has been taken out, and the difference is a judicial warrant, as the name implies, means you've gone to a judge. There are administrative warrants you can pretty much just write yourself as a federal agency, and then there's a judicial warrant, which is sort of the gold standard because you have to prove you have a need to actually go in and do something. That judicial warrant piece has been taken out of the bill again to make it so that it can get through the legislature, but the SAFE Act is still another critically important effort to make sure that, again, the government is not getting information it doesn't need to do things we don't want it doing. A kid showing up to their early learning center should not face the fear that they won't be picked up by a parent at the end of that day. So we want to support that bill as well. Again, there are so many. One other thing off that topic, I will say another great bill that the legislature is working on that we're in support of is to make sure that, yes, vaccines are required, and yes, they're required so that people's insurance can pay for those vaccines. Those bills are going through, and we're excited to see those things happening. I will give our other speaker his moment here. So let me just see if there's one more I think I wanted to share with you. Those bills are HB 2242 and SB 5967. Those are the vaccine-related bills. And the other piece I will just mention is an effort to ensure that there is not surveillance price fixing, which also helps our lower income folks not have their prices change because somebody has decided through an algorithm that they can afford to pay more. And I'll leave it at that and turn it over to Luke.
Okay, listen. So I just want to let you know how important you are. I had to cut the governor off, and I told the governor, listen, I got to be back here, give an update. So I'm Luke Jasmine. I'm the Eastern Washington representative for Governor Ferguson's office. So mainly what I do is external relations. I'm meeting with a lot of you, hearing what's working, what's not, and just making sure that gets to policymakers, the governor's office, in order to have positive effects here in our region. I this is fairly dense, okay? And so, currently right now, which many of you, I'm sure are aware of, we're facing a $2.3 billion deficit in our state. So, and we're looking at next biennium, so that means the following 2 to 4 budget cycle year, we're anticipating about a $15 billion deficit. Okay, so things are pretty serious right now, and how we got here, several ways. One, ACA. So Affordable Care Act dollars that we're, getting into community, those are pretty much null and void right now. We have, a lot of it is because of our federal government right now, and major cuts to programs like health and other areas. And then, the other piece is just, inflation, just costs, going up, okay? So, but that's where we're at. And the governor has proposed no new taxes to close, this session, but he does support a wealth tax. So no new taxes on us, unless we have multimillionaires in this room. If we do, please talk to me afterwards. And what governor really wants and is directing our state legislature to do is, okay, let's figure out how to balance our tax code. So that means let's not just do a wealth tax. Let's figure out how we can alleviate some of the pressures that we're facing every day. Sales tax, B&O, gas tax, things of that nature are what we're looking at to offset and make things more balanced. So, one of the things is we're facing cuts to childcare. So for those of you who are, childcare is really important. What's being proposed right now would remove a lot of families from work and connection subsidies. Okay, provider rates would drop, which ultimately would cause quite a bit of closures. Okay, there's a 50% cut to professional development funding. And transitional kindergarten is just one of the type of programs that's in place to be able to support families. And there's a proposal to eliminate a lot of the transitional kindergarten slots. Okay, so Democrats right now are pushing for us to use our rainy day funds to cover some of these cuts, but they're very real. And again, if early learning and childcare is very important to you, I would say get involved, okay? Immigration. So for many of you who know me, I'm a first-generation Haitian American. We have a large Haitian population here in Spokane. I believe last we tracked, it's around 500 people here of Haitian descent. And we're fairly limited in what we could do as a state and as a city. But there are some bills that are moving. So Senate Bill 5855, and I apologize if either of you went through these already. But if we did, then you need to memorize afterwards, and we'll quiz you. Okay. So Senate Bill 5855 bans ICE agents from wearing masks during routine operations. So that passed Senate and it's heading to the House. Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, give it up. Yeah. Yeah. House Bill 2165, it criminalizes impersonating law enforcement. Okay. Then that one's actually moving with bipartisan support, surprisingly. House Bill 2411, it allows state workers to use shared leave for immigration-related absences. Okay, and that passed the House. All right, and again, I know I'm breezing through these. Make sure to follow up with me afterwards, and I can get you more detailed information. Okay. So housing. We're actually expecting quite a bit of new investment, just because we do have a housing issue. So we're looking at a tune of $244 million in new investments, and a lot of that would go to the Housing Trust Fund, and it's just allowing more capabilities to build different types of homes. Okay, and then House Bill 2151 streamlines modular housing standards. So I would follow that. Rent stabilization is not really moving this session. Okay. It passed last session, correct? Yeah. So there's no meaning there's no new.
The rent stabilization passed last session, House Bill 1217, that caps rents at 7% at the max of 10%, and manufactured homes, they're capped at rent at 5% annually.
Yes, that is true. Okay, but this session, there's no new movement there. Okay, but you are correct. Last year was a big year for rent stabilization. Healthcare. So. Look, we received about $181 million in federal funds for rural health, and but we're really looking at the federal cuts to Medicaid. That and again, these are rough numbers, right? These are not actual, but we're thinking this is probably going to affect about 30,000 Washingtonians, and long-term care for about 3,000 seniors and people with disabilities. So starting October 1st. So state lawmakers are negotiating how to backfill these losses. But again, we have a big deficit. So really pushing on our federal delegation to make sure that they're protecting health is very important. Okay. So looking at health bills that are moving right now, House Bill 2283, it requires insurers to spend 90 cents of every premium dollar on patient care. We have House Bill 1566, which limits prior authorization decisions to medical professionals, so not AI. Okay. Now, just kind of briefly going over the Spokane specific movement that's happening. So the Spokane waste to energy plant, there's quite a bit of conversation happening around that. So our facility is one of the only in Washington, and is the only solid waste system in the state subject to Climate Commitment Act penalties. Now, what that means, and landfills right now are exempt. Which, what the numbers we have is Spokane ratepayers pay between $4 to $8 million annually, starting in 2027, if there isn't anything done to either. So what we're asking, or what the city is asking for, is relief to meet the climate commitment standards. So that the rates just don't go up. Okay, and then the other one is so as a lot of you might have remembered the Spokane ordinance, the safe and accessible spaces. Okay, we're kind of watching House Bill 2489, and this is Shelter Not Penalties Act. Folks are afraid that this is going to override what the city passed. And really what this is saying is cities cannot enforce camping bans unless they prove adequate shelter space is available. Okay, so again, I just wanted to give a quick rundown of what's moving this year. And not. And again, if you want to follow up with me for more information, just let me know. Thank you all.
We'll maybe take a couple of questions from the audience. Yes?
I did want to make a clarification.
Sure.
The millionaire's tax if even past this year, the money that I talked about wouldn't be implemented till 2029. However, Rep. Sean Scott's bill, House Bill 2100, if implemented now, would actually bring in some money to counter some of these cuts that we've heard, and we could have a more budget rooted in dignity, accountability, and justice.
So a number of steps you can take. Both FAN and the Catholic Conference we have an advocacy bulletin that goes out during the session, goes out every week. We also put our legislative bills on our website so you can see. Our advocacy bulletin will have links to go in and submit your comments. So there's 3 things you can do, well, 4 things you can do. When the bill is in committee, you can sign in pro, and you'll see, that has some effect and it doesn't. I mean, you'll see bills where they'll have 15,000 people signing in con, and the bill's going to pass. So just signing in pro is a step to take. That's kind of the baby step. The next step is to sign up to testify. That's a little scarier, but you can do it remotely. You don't have to be in Olympia to do that, or you can come to Olympia and testify in person. You may or may not get called. Most of the committees are really good about trying to call everybody who's signed in to testify, and you'll get, if you're lucky, you get a minute. If you're really lucky, you get a minute and a half. And if they know you and like you, you get 2 minutes now. But signing in to testify is helpful because, again, you really kind of get to present your perspective. The other thing you can do is send in written comments, which are also helpful, and that's to the committee. So if your legislator is not a committee member, that is your way to send in your thoughts to the committee. Other than that, following the bills, finding out where they're at, when they hit the floor, so these bills that have passed their committees, they can be pulled to the floor in the House or the Senate at any time. And so now is the time, if you see a bill on our list that has gotten through committee, now is the time to contact your legislator and say, hey, this bill is a priority for me. And you can do that again on the legislative website. If you go to the bill, you'll see, send a comment to your legislator. You can just click that. It'll ask your address, it'll find your legislators, and you can send your comments to all 3, your 2 representatives and your senator, through that link. Do put in your subject line that you are a constituent. They are getting thousands of emails a day. They have interns who are reading through those emails. They will typically ask their interns prioritize constituents. So you do want to say immediately, and don't be rude, right? And don't hide the ball. Constituent concerned about SB 5906. And so you want to be brief, you want to be respectful, get to your point, and don't give them every great point you think you have in your head. Leave it to your top 3 points, and no one's going to scroll through your email if it's 10 pages long, so just keep it brief and get to the point. Other thoughts?
They say that advocacy and what can be done at the legislature is actually how much space they're given in the public sphere and community. So I even believe letters to the editor. So then they feel like, hey, there's people in my community that cares a lot about this, and that can be used even to pass on all around Washington State. Even letters to the governor saying you would like to see some progressive revenue to avoid some of these cuts. So that is one way as well, is a letter from you or from associations or organizations, faith communities, to even, let's say, the Speaker of the House to the leadership or Senate majority, be like, we'd like to see this pulled, we'd like to see this get a floor vote. Aside from what Jean said, that this is some of the things that you can also do.
Remember, this is an election year. Every member of the House will be up for election in 2026. So after the session is over, when they're preparing for next year's biennium budget, with the hole still existing, go to those events that your representatives and senators are holding. Town halls, even if they're telephone town halls, you are their constituent. You have the right to ask them hard questions. And they are running for, well, again, not every senator will be up for election, but the House will. Ask them the hard questions and let them know what your priorities are for the coming year, because you'll know how this is all played out by then. By this summer, when they start having events, by the fall when they start having events, you're going to see how things played out. You're going to know by the time those events start happening after Labor Day how that's impacted your community. Go to those events. I strongly urge you to let them know there are constituents here who feel this way about these priorities, and here we are. There's at least 10 of us in the room, or there's 5 of us in the room, or there's 2 of us in the room. Here's what we care about, and what are you going to do in the next session about those things?
And just really quick to add to that, like that's very valuable. And yes, this session's happening right now. We need to do everything in our powers to advocate. But during interim, so right after session, that's really where a lot of the work happens. And what I'll say, which many of you probably already know this, is sometimes you reach out and you want to talk to that legislator, and they have their staff available. And what we've seen and what I see in the governor's office quite a bit is staff get blown off. And folks are like, oh, no, I don't want to, you're not a decision maker. I want to talk to this legislator. That staff are the ones that do the work, okay? So you should make staff, your best friend, okay? Seriously, because it's about a relationship, and at the end of the day, we're people, right? So, just, that's fantastic advice. Just remember, look, build on that relationship. It's not going to happen quick, but if you don't have a relationship with anyone and you're demanding things, we're human beings still.